Look, every single month, you're engaging in a financial battle. You're biologically programmed to lose this fight. Now, if your wealth-building strategy relies on manual transfers into savings, listen closely. Statistics show you have a 99.5% chance of failing to save enough. See, you aren't lacking discipline. You're just fighting your own brain. And the truth is, it's winning. Now, meet Leo. Leo is 30 years old, smart, and works hard. He really wants to be rich. He knows he needs to save. So, every single month, Leo sets a goal. He says, this month, I'm putting $500 into my investment account. See, Leo's plan is simple. It relies on just one thing. That thing is Leo's manual intervention. He gets paid, logs in, and makes the transfer. Sounds easy, right? But the thing is, Leo has an enemy he can't see. It's a villain engineered by hundreds of thousands of years of human evolution. We call this villain cognitive forces. Look, it's not a lack of money. Instead, it's a structural design flaw in the human brain. This flaw makes manual saving an act of constant biological rebellion. Now, the first head of this monster is hyperbolic discounting. This is just a fancy way of explaining something simple. Your brain holds a massive bias toward the present over the future. See, your brain evolved to secure immediate survival. It wants food today and shelter tonight. It simply doesn't naturally optimize for a multi-decade compound interest. Look, when traditional economists looked at this, they made an assumption. They thought humans made rational, smooth choices. Well, they were wrong. Behavioral economics shows our valuation of the future doesn't drop off smoothly. Instead, it crashes. Think about it for a second. If I offer you $50 today or $100 in 1 year, what happens? Almost everyone takes the $50 right now. But what if I offer you $50 in 5 years or $100 in 6 years? That's the exact same 1 year delay. In that case, you'll gladly wait for the $100, 38 sec to. Now, this is called preference reversal. As a reward gets closer, your brain perceives its value to be exponentially higher. So, when Leo's paycheck clears, something happens. The immediate gratification of consumption kicks in. That new monitor, or that nice dinner out, feels great. These things will almost always overpower the distant concept of retirement. Funding an account 30 years away feels too abstract. Leo's brain is literally screaming, the now is worth more. And here's the kicker. Neuropsychology actually tells us why. See, fMRI scans show what happens when you think about your future self. Your brain activates the exact same neural patterns as thinking about a complete stranger. So, when 30-year-old Leo manually transfers money into his retirement, it hurts. His brain experiences the exact same psychological pain. It feels like he's giving that money to a random person on the street. But look, hyperbolic discounting isn't fighting alone. The second villain here is decision fatigue. This is just a simple biological fact. The quality of your decisions deteriorates after a long session of making choices. Now, every single manual saving decision Leo makes has a cost. It consumes his limited cognitive bandwidth. He wonders, should this $500 go into my Canadian RRSP or TFSA? Then he asks, is my asset allocation right? Or, should I make the transfer today or wait until next week? See, these complex choices completely drain his mental battery. This is a highly quantified state of depletion. Look, research across different sectors shows just how dangerous this fatigue really is. In high-stakes environments, negotiators in a state of decision fatigue suffer. They leave an average of 32% more money on the table. Also, a study of bank loan officers showed something similar. Approval rates for restructuring loans completely plummeted as their shift progressed. Fatigue made them default to the safest, most passive option available. They started just saying no to avoid the mental labor of risk assessment. Now, when this applies to retail investors like Leo, the data is clear. Vanguard reveals they default to conservative, suboptimal investments or cash equivalents. See, they aren't actually choosing. They're just giving up. This choice paralysis defaults them into options that seriously underperform in personal finance. Decisions postponed due to mental fatigue are dangerous. They carry an 83% probability of never being revisited. The thing is, this is the true cost of decision fatigue. Postponing your retirement contribution by a single year at age 30 hurts. It can reduce your lifetime retirement savings by over $100,000. Now, for a 35-year-old, the math gets even worse. The resultant 3% annual penalty compounded over a lifetime is massive. It results in a loss exceeding $300,000. Look, this is a continuous tax on your cognitive resources, and it guarantees that manual systems will eventually fail. Now, the final villain here is choice overload. The financial services industry loves to tell you a little lie. They say that more choice is always better. But see, the data tells us the exact opposite. Too many options lead straight to analysis paralysis. It causes decreased motivation and results in highly suboptimal decision-making. Look, this was proven in a massive, landmark study. It looked at over 600 pension plans covering nearly 800,000 employees. The results were shocking. For every 10 additional mutual funds added to a retirement plan's menu, participation fell. The rates dropped by 1.5 to 2 percentage points. See, when confronted with a massive array of investment vehicles, employees became completely overwhelmed. Their cognitive load simply exceeded their psychological resources. Because of this, they defaulted to taking nitrogen monoxide action at all. And even when they did participate, choice overload degraded the quality of their choices. For every 10 funds added, the allocation to equity funds decreased. It dropped by over 3 percentage points. Meanwhile, allocations to highly conservative bond and money market accounts increased. Faced with too many options, the brain simply seeks safety and simplicity. This inadvertently sabotages your long-term, inflation-adjusted growth. So, Leo's monster is very real, and it's incredibly powerful. His own brain is constantly working against him. Plus, the entire structure of the manual financial system is designed to make him fail. Every single month, Leo faces a three-headed cognitive villain, and his only weapon is willpower. But look, we already know willpower is a rapidly depleting resource. Because of this, Leo's piggy bank stays empty. But now, Leo is about to find the ultimate weapon. He's about to discover something amazing. The world's most powerful financial minds and entire sovereign governments have noticed something. They've recognized this exact failure of human psychology. And the best part is, they've actually engineered the solution. It's called systemic automation. See, Leo dives right into the research data. He's not going to try to build more discipline. Instead, he's going to build a completely new architecture. He examines exactly how this works around the world. First, he starts with the United States. He looks at the Save More Tomorrow or SMART framework. This was designed by behavioral economist Richard Thaler and Shlomo Benartzi. Look, this program is an absolute masterclass. It shows exactly how utilizing automation can completely bypass cognitive biases. Now, it works on 4 core automated components. First, employees are asked to commit to increasing their savings rate in the future. This is usually 3 months before a scheduled raise. See, this completely neutralizes present bias. Why? Because it's psychologically easy to commit your future self to a disciplined action. Second, the increases are intrinsically linked to future pay raises. The automated increase begins on the exact date of that first bigger paycheck. It reflects the new, higher salary perfectly. This ties automated increases directly to pay raises. That completely neutralizes loss aversion, which is the psychological pain of seeing your paycheck decrease. Look, because your take-home pay never actually went down, you feel nitrogen monoxide pain. Third, the contribution rate automatically escalates with each subsequent raise. It keeps going until a percent maximum is finally reached. And finally, the employee retains the illusion of control. They can manually opt out at absolutely any time. But here's the genius part. The sheer power of inertia ensures that very few people ever actually do. Look, the results were absolutely staggering. Let's look at its first major implementation at a manufacturing company. Around 78% of employees who previously refused to save more manually agreed to join. They happily opted into the automated plan. Then, over the course of just 28 to 40 months, something crazy happened. Their average savings rate more than tripled. It skyrocketed from a 3.5% to an astonishing 11.6 to 13.6%. Automated inertia was incredibly strong. In fact, 98% of the participants remained in the program through to consecutive pay raises, and even better, 80% stayed through 3 entire raises. Now, Leo then looks across the Atlantic to the United Kingdom. They prove the efficacy of automation on a massive, sovereign scale. See, back in 2012, manual, voluntary pension participation in the UK private sector was hurting. It was in severe decline, plummeting to a dismal 32%. But the UK government clearly understood the 1 inch minus 100 rule. Look, history and data prove something important about 20th century economic policy. The foundational assumption was that educated individuals will rationally calculate and save. Well, that assumption is entirely false. Adair Turner, chairman of the UK Pensions Commission, revealed a shocking statistic. He found that only 0.5%, or exactly 1 in 200 people, make rational pension decisions. The rest certainly don't base it on a rational assessment. So, the UK decided to change the choice architecture. They boldly introduced nationwide automatic enrolment. Because of this, employers were legally required to take action. They had to automatically enroll eligible workers into a qualifying workplace pension. Now, employees still retain the right to opt out, preserving their liberty. But the default action was fundamentally changed. It went from do nothing and save nothing to do nothing and save consistently. See, the reversal was immediate and truly historic. Between April 2012 and April 2021, the proportion of eligible workers participating surged. It jumped from 46.5% to 79.4%. In 2021 alone, UK employees saved a massive £114.6 billion through this mechanism. That's a real-term increase of nearly £33 billion compared to 2012. Look, the UK case study proves something definitively. Saving works best when it's tied to payroll before the funds ever reach your bank account, by removing the friction and partitioning the funds. Participation reaches near universal levels. Now, Leo then finds the ultimate global contrast. He looks at the comparison of Australia and New Zealand. See, both have modern, widely accessible systems. Yet, the macroeconomic outcomes diverge radically. It's all based on the aggressiveness of their systemic design. Look, New Zealand introduced KY Saver back in 2007. The system relies on automatic enrollment, but it allows employees to easily opt out or take contribution holidays. Because of this, its combined contribution rate hovers between just 3 and 6%. Australia, conversely, introduced its superannuation guarantee earlier, in 1992. They took a far more aggressive approach. Australian super is a strictly automated, mandatory system. Employers are required by law to contribute a set percentage of an employee's earnings. This is currently set at 11% and is scaling up to 12%. Now, this data highlights the exact difference between two approaches. There's a big gap between a system that merely supports people to save and one that ensures it. The strict system ensures people save enough regardless of their willpower. See, the accumulated wealth tells a vastly different story here. As of 2023, after 17 years, New Zealand's accumulated assets were lacking. They accounted for only 37% of its GDP. In stark contrast, Australia's accumulated assets sat at a staggering 147% of its GDP. This makes it one of the most robust, heavily capitalized private pension pools on the planet. Look, the Australian model proves something vital. When automation is absolute and friction is completely removed, magic happens. National wealth scales exponentially when it's out of the hands of the individual. And look, other nations are definitely watching. Leo notes that the Republic of Ireland is scheduled to launch its own auto-enrollment system. It's called My Future Fund, starting in September 2025. See, Ireland has designed an automated escalation model over a 10-year horizon. The Irish system mathematically dictates a brilliant match. For every €3 the employee contributes, an extra €7 will be automatically added. This happens through employer matches and state top-ups. By automating this escalation over a decade, Ireland is engineering a flawless environment. They're making manual financial failure mathematically difficult. The individual doesn't need to log in, reassess their budget, or manually increase standing orders. The system handles the cognitive load entirely. Finally, Leo looks over at Canada. Here, the battle between manual discipline and systemic automation is very clear. It's seen in how citizens utilize their RSPs and tax-free savings accounts. See, Canadians are frequently blinded by the refund. Driven by present bias, they manually sock money into our RSPs for the immediate tax refund. In doing so, they often entirely neglect the TFSA. That's a mistake, because it offers immense tax-free compounding, even without the immediate deduction. Now, to bypass this cognitive block, Canadian institutions have taken action. They've heavily promoted automated micro-saving tools. Take programs like Scotiabank's Bank the Rest, for example. They automatically round up debit card transactions to the nearest $1 or $5 increment. Then, they instantly transfer the difference into savings. Look, if Leo spent $20 in a day on coffee, parking, and lunch, he'd be surprised. He would find that $5 had been invisibly saved. See, setting aside $150 in a single manual lump sum. At the end of the month is hard. It triggers loss aversion and feels completely insurmountable if your budget is stretched thin. But just $5 a day siphoned off invisibly through transaction roundups is different. It entirely bypasses the brain's mental blocks. By turning the act of spending into an automated trigger for saving, magic happens. The system creates sneaky little wins that don't require ANY motivation or willpower. So, Leo has finally found the golden thread. It connects the UK's pension participation to the tripling of US savings rates. It links Australia's trillion-dollar asset pool with Canada's micro-savings algorithms. And that powerful thread is systemic friction removal. Now, he stops treating willpower as an infinite resource. It absolutely is not. Willpower is a volatile, rapidly depleting asset. It's subject to daily emotional and economic shocks. See, when decision fatigue sets in or an unexpected bill arrives, the manual saver cracks. They will invariably prioritize the present over the future. Look, a manual process essentially guarantees a near 100% failure rate over a 40-year investing horizon. Why? Because that requires 480 consecutive, correct manual choices. But automated savings systems completely invert this. They don't strip individuals of their agency. You're always free to opt out, but instead they change the default setting. It goes from action required to save to action required to stop saving. By doing this, the system uses human laziness, inertia, and procrastination to your advantage. They become wealth-building tools, rather than wealth-destroying liabilities. And look, automated systems inherently practice partition accounting. They automatically sweep funds into an investment vehicle before the capital ever settles. Once it hits your primary checking account, it's too late. So, the system creates a powerful psychological firewall. Now, Leo subconsciously adjusts his lifestyle to a new, artificial baseline. He lives off his visible checking account. See, money he never saw is money he never misses. This entirely neutralizes the hyperbolic discounting effect. So, Leo is no longer just a saver trying to apply willpower. He is now a wealth architect. He's finally aligned his strategy with biological reality. Look, the data proves unequivocally that wealth is not generated by willpower. The continuous, painful application of discipline simply doesn't work. Instead, true wealth is generated by building a frictionless, automated architecture, one that operates relentlessly in the background. It stays out of sight, out of mind, and safely out of the reach of human error.